All right, guys. Welcome back to the podcast. 2.5 beards.
I'm back.
Abs here. Rayon.
Rayon.
I know we haven't been consistent with our
Recording.
episodes, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but we'll try and be as consistent as we can going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So today, kind of we've got a very different episode. So yeah, obviously hope you guys are all well. And thank you for watching us again, obviously. So yeah, this episode is going to be very different from what we usually do. Obviously, where we usually kind of just turn up, talk crap for about 45 minutes of, I guess, current social events and all that sort of stuff. This week is going to be a bit different. We've got a very special episode with a very special guest as well. So to give you guys, I guess, some context to the episode before we get straight into it, essentially, the government has recently launched a new campaign called Enough. Now, I'm gonna have to read a little bit of this, but the campaign basically is one that empowers individuals to challenge people who commit a range of abusive actions against women and girls. Um, and to raise awareness of what can be done basically if you experience or witness this type of abuse. What many of you guys may tend to find, and what we're finding a lot in our community is that a lot of women and girls are always looking over their shoulder, when they're walking home from work, when they're walking home from school, even within their households and in their families, they're constantly kind of you know worried about, I guess, types of abuse that they would be facing. So obviously, having said all that, we've got a very special guest today, called Natasha Ratu. She's a director of a charity called Karma Nirvana, which is a UK's specialist charity for victims and survivors of honour-based abuse, and she's here to talk about that campaign and issues of violence against women and girls. Yeah, really, really excited to have you on. So yeah, how are you?
I'm good, and thank you for giving the opportunity to talk about these issues as well, because they're just so vitally important conversations that need to be had. So, really delighted to be here and to be your first interviewee as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, obviously, talk to us about the Enough campaign. I mean, what is it about?
So, the Enough campaign's been launched by the government as part of their commitment to tackling violence against women and girls. So, the government have launched a strategy with a plan on how they're going to tackle this issue. And what it aims to do is really, as you said at the beginning, raise awareness about how we can improve understanding of the range of abusive behaviours that can take place within the community, but also to educate the public about how they can help. And this campaign is a bit different. So there has been a recent campaign called You Are Not Alone, which focuses on domestic abuse. But this is focusing on the wide range of different behaviours that can take place, that kind of fall under this umbrella of violence against women and girls. And it's also recognising that I think for far too long we've been asking people impacted by this to come forward and to get help or to leave. This campaign is about actually people taking responsibility. So if you are a bystander or if you're aware that these issues are going on, we all have a role and a responsibility to play to tackle it. So the onus isn't just on that person affected, it's on family members, community members, friends, etc. So this campaign is a little bit different in that way, and it's about empowering people within the community to be part of that change, so that we end this from the root and not just kind of deal with the impact where people have to leave to be safe. So it's quite different in that way.
Fair enough. And obviously, when you say kind of, obviously, in terms of the community that you're targeting as well, is that kind of the South Asian community specifically, or is that sort of just as a whole?
So the campaign is as a whole, and it's about recognizing that violence against women and girls can impact any woman or girl from whatever background she's from, However, with that said, within some particular communities, it can be more difficult for women and girls to stand up and be heard. There are more barriers, such as the shame or the stigma of coming forward. So I think it's also about recognizing some of those extra hurdles that some women and girls face specifically. But the campaign is for any woman or girl and any individual that might want to come forward and take responsibility to stop it.
No, of course, of course.
I'm guessing, especially with honor based violence, it can be from family members. I'm guessing, so like parents being violent towards their children because they're ashamed or did something that they didn't like. Is Do you find that hard? Do you find that people tend to not come forward because they want to protect their family? They don't want to expose certain kind of negative stigmas that their family might have and expose it to others.
I think it is absolutely more challenging. I think you have two issues that make it harder for people to come forward. You have people that grow up with a deep conditioning that it's normal for your family to make every choice about your life, whether it's what you study, how you behave, etc. And, to a degree, your parents do have a role and a responsibility to make decisions. But where that is abusive and where that continues into adulthood, that can be viewed as coercive control. So I think for some people, they might normalize that, it's normal for my parents, my family, my community to say what I can and cannot do. But then equally, the point that you just made there really well about how actually there can be huge stigma as well. And absolutely, people don't want to necessarily report parents or, share information that family members are doing things that are part of, what we're talking about today. But the reality is nobody should be experiencing an abuse, whether it's from a partner or a family member. And it's about having the ability to know that this isn't normal and that you have the right to make your own choices. I think it's absolutely difficult where you come from communities where there's huge shame in talking out. So I think part of ending this is stopping the shame, because actually I think there's huge shame in the behaviors of perpetrators who may be parents or family members. And often they make the person going through it feeling like they're causing shame by talking out. So we need to kind of flip that switch. It's on you, actually. If you're doing that to your family member, then that's shame on you, not on that person experiencing it.
Yeah, it's kind of like blaming, isn't it? Where you take that responsibility away from the perpetrator and say that it's the victim should be doing more.
Yeah.
We just had a quick question about so obviously it's this is focused on women and girls. What about situations where it's a boy in the family? So I can imagine. So with a lot of Asian culture, family, all of that, they don't, for example, homosexuality. They don't look at that kind of stuff as the norm, and violence or abuse that's caused through that or
Or
is
anything
resulted
else,
from
yeah.
that towards males, towards men. Is there anything you guys do to tackle that at all?
Yeah, I mean, at Karma Nirvana, we deliver the Home Office commissioned helpline for victims of honour-based abuse, and that includes men. So in 2008, we reconstituted ourselves with the Charity Commission. We used to be a women-only project, but absolutely recognise that these issues don't just impact women and girls, and often there are very few spaces for men and boys to come forward and to get help. So we support men, but a lot of charities support men only, but we're a bit different and unique in that way. And yeah, you're absolutely right. These issues do impact men and boys as well. And I think, regardless of whether you're a woman or a man, every experience is valid. And I think we also need to know that for men and boys in particular, it can be even more difficult to come forward because, again, the stigma of it's not, macho or masculine, or there's some shame in coming forward if this is happening to you and you're a man. So yeah, I think we need to be breaking down those taboos for men and boys as well. And yeah, I think the strategy does recognise that it does impact men and boys, and we absolutely do support men and boys too.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, that's not us trying to, I guess, take like take anything away from, I guess, the, you know, I know the campaign kind of does focus a lot on women and girls, and it's kind of violence against women and girls campaign, but it was more just, yeah, kind of seeing what you guys kind of extend to on that side of things as well. So I mean, yeah, in terms of like, I guess, people listening as well, I mean, what type of, I mean, can you give us any examples of, I guess, a type of abuse that we would kind of need to look out for, or, you know, kind of know if what we're experiencing is that type of abuse as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, abuse does take a whole range of different forms. I think people always look out for the physical violence, which is much easier to physically see because you can see, you know, bruises, broken bones, there's some physical ailment. But what happens far more often, and often there's the fear of the physical violence, but a whole host of other things that are happening before that happens. You know, it can include that coercive control, it can include financial abuse. So there's lots of abuse that kind of take place in the home, but there's also abuse that you might witness if you're out in the street. It could be verbal harassment or in the workplace, or, you know, any behavior that's unwanted that's being perpetrated towards a woman or girl. And of course, in the work that we do, forced marriage would also be an example of something like a form of violence against women and girls. So it, you know, these types of abuse can affect anybody, regardless of age, ethnicity, or social status. And I think what's really, really important is that the victim going through this recognizes that this is not their fault and that these behaviors, full stop, are unacceptable. As we said earlier, you know, it doesn't matter who's perpetrating it, whether it's somebody that says that they love you, if it's a family member, a partner, it's unacceptable, full stop. So it's any behavior essentially that's unwanted, that makes that person feel uncomfortable or unsafe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you get a lot of people where they, like, forced marriage, for example, the like obviously the whole point is that we're advising and encouraging people, so friends and other family members of a person that could be going through this, to come forward and report it and stand up for them. Do you get situations where the friend wants to report it, but the person who's actually experiencing it, they don't want to cause an issue, they don't want to, because forced marriage, they just want to think, okay, my family, this is what my family wants, I don't want you to get involved, you're not part of my family. So anything like that, where it's a difficult situation for someone to come forward, where they think they might be stepping out of line.
Yeah, I mean, we do get friends that will call on behalf of people that go through forced marriage specifically, but we do get people who ring themselves as well, who are really looking for solutions, or, you know, because at the end of the day, the people that go through this absolutely love their family. In the most cases, they absolutely love their family, but they don't want to have to marry somebody that they don't know, or it might be that they already have somebody in their life that they want to be with, but the family don't approve of that person. So I think there's a wider piece of work here that needs to be done to educate families as well, that, you know, pressuring your son or your daughter to marry somebody that they don't want to marry should never ever be acceptable. And it might be that the parent feels like they're doing the best thing by their child, but if that's not what they want, then that's never going to be the best thing for them. So yeah, going back to your question, we do get people who are third parties. Now, in terms of the action that can be taken, will all depend on whether they're a child or an adult. If they're a child, then we have real clear laws around safeguarding and the need to protect. And forced marriage is a child protection issue because of the other offences that will take place within that forced marriage. But if they are an adult, it's about advising on what the options are and what they can do to kind of come away and break away from that situation, and trying to give that person more reasons to leave versus reasons to stay, because I think there are so many reasons to stay, to be in that unit, but actually organizations like ours and others exist to give people more options and more reasons to leave and to live a life that's authentic and on their terms, and a life that they want to live. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Perfect. And I mean, obviously, going back to, I guess, the campaign itself, I know you kind of touched on the fact that prior to this campaign, there was another one as well. I mean, could you talk to us, I guess, a little bit about how these campaigns can benefit these victims, themselves?
Yeah, I mean, so the You Are Not Alone campaign came about from the pandemic. It was just at the beginning of the pandemic and lockdown. And I think was all about really recognizing that many victims that because of lockdown were going to be locked in with perpetrators would often feel that, they were on their own and that there was no help. So the You Are Not Alone campaign was there to really heighten awareness that actually there is so much support out there and that they are not alone. We and other helplines experienced real increased reporting levels on the back of that campaign. So with there were lots of briefings weren't there throughout the pandemic where various ministers took the podium and the number for the helplines would be on there, and the You Are Not Alone branding would all be televised. So it was a great kind of marketing campaign to remind people, and calls to our helpline I think at the peak increased to just over 250%, which was pretty massive. And a lot of people who were really quite anxious about if they wanted to leave, how would they leave safely, particularly in honor-based abuse where, they might have multiple perpetrators living within their home, making it more difficult for them to leave. So the campaign was really, really important to help victims to realise that actually, they're not alone, and, their safety and their well-being is still a huge priority, and that support is available regardless of lockdown.
You do feel like these campaigns do have like a massive kind of, I guess, effect on those people. Like you said, the percentage of the amount of people that were calling the helplines did kind of dramatically increase during that whole campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. Really did have an impact, and not just to our helpline, but also to like the National Domestic Abuse Helpline and other services, because during that time, a lot of like the local projects that were operating on a face-to-face basis had to stop because of COVID. So a lot of those referrals were going into the national services like ours. So yeah, we definitely felt that increase.
Okay. Well, I mean, like, it's good, I guess, that these campaigns are making that difference. Then, I mean, that's, I guess, what we're here for at the end of the day. So it's nice to see that it actually makes a difference.
Yeah, of
And
course.
I mean, I guess I know you and Abs kind of touched on previously as well. A lot of the types of abuse, they're not going to be physical. There won't be signs of violent of abuse, i.e., no physical bruising or anything like that. I guess what we'd like to know, I'm sure the both of us would know, as people who have, like, I guess, female friends or women in our life that we don't live with. I mean, what can we do? Would you say, or are there any signs that we can look out for to be able to kind of identify that that these women might be going through certain things where there isn't, I guess, physical signs of abuse?
Well, a lot of the time it can be psychological as
Exactly.
well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. Like I said, what would you say we need to look out for in that sense?
I think there's so much that can be done. And I think men and boys within the community can play a real vital role in being disruptors of ideology which enable this behavior. So, it would be amazing if men and boys, brothers within the community, where they see the disparity in how their sisters are being treated differently, where they, hear conversations where there's expectations that women and girls should, have particular gender conformative roles, to challenge that. Because by not challenging that, a lot of this starts within the home, first and foremost. And it doesn't just start, in teenage years or when people get married, etc. This happens from a really early on age. And unfortunately, families are enablers where they hold these ideas in their head that this is what women and girls do and this is what boys and men can do.
Yeah.
And it's about challenging that. It's disrupting those sort of ideas, because it's those ideas that enable men to feel, when we're talking about violence against women and girls, where it's perpetrated by men, it enables them to feel that it's okay to have that degree of control over my wife, or it's okay, to hold these sorts of beliefs. And for the victim going through this, also within the community thinking that this is just normal. So I think that we need to be disrupting those thoughts and those ideas. You might hear conversations and it's about being a dissenting voice in that space. So actually, that's not right. Or so being a voice for women and girls is an absolutely, vital starting point if we want to deal with the root of it. But of course, if we're talking about somebody that is going through domestic abuse, as an example, there aren't always many signs that you can look out for, particularly for South Asian women in particular, because you don't always see bruising on skin. It's not always very visible. So you might notice that they're being, isolated or withdrawn. There's a difference. And it's about being able to sensitively, if you hold that space to have such a conversation, or enabling somebody that might hold that space to have that chat about, notice, that you seem to be a bit withdrawn, or you're not, connecting in the same way. So holding that safe space for that person to talk openly would be the first thing that you could do.
No, exactly. And to be fair, that's kind of what I was gonna follow on to. As in, you know, again, like as men, I guess what could we do to, you know, give women or girls in our families or in our kind of circle that comfort to be able to, I guess, confide in us? Would you be able to, I guess, give any advice in terms of like, yeah, what we can do to make them feel comfortable to have that safe space and have those sort of conversations with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I think if you can show that you don't stand for these ideas that enable this abuse to happen, I think you're creating a safe space, full stop. So you don't even need to necessarily hold that conversation with them, to create that safe space. They can see that you don't stand for these behaviors that enable this abuse to happen. If you then see that they may be experiencing this, you've already then positioned yourself in a space where actually you're somebody that they could go to, that they could speak to. And I think it's about enabling them to see that the abuse that is happening is wrong, because many people, particularly within the community, don't recognize that, or don't feel like within the community or within the family, they've got many safe spaces to go to. So I think that's a really key small thing that you could do. And I think if everybody did that, we would gradually change these ideas that are just being handed down generation after generation, and not, we're not cutting the legacy anywhere, we're just perpetuating it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, definitely.
So the one thing that just came to my mind, so obviously a lot of those stuff where coming forward, supporting and kind of standing up for like your family member. What would your advice be for like a boy or a man in the family where they're not that outspoken, they don't have like that kind of influence over their family, like younger brothers or someone that feels they can't say no, that's not right, or they don't feel like they have the power to kind of influence any decisions like that? What would your advice be towards someone like that?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I mean, you don't want people to feel uncomfortable, but I think it's about having those reflections about that person who is going through this. How must they feel? And I don't think you necessarily have to be a voice of influence within, the family. And I also think it's quite ambitious to think that we can, through one person, change the way that parents, family members think, because they felt and thought this way for years and years. But I think just by challenging it, by standing up for the person that's going through this and being available, I think if we all did that in our own unique way, over time, we would change this. So it's not necessarily asking people to have confrontations with their family and, saying this is wrong, but enabling the women and girls in your family to know that you don't hold those views, that you are a space that they can come to. I think that's really, really important. And also not being part of the problem. And I think even innocently, and just to kind of give an example, I'm Punjabi, Sikh, grown up with big family, and you see growing up, the men and the boys will allow the girls to cook for them and will go out to drink. That's all enabling behavior to a degree, and it's not abusive. There's no abuse in that, but actually bridging the inequality, being the person to kind of stand up and recognize that, well, is it actually fair that that's something that is just expected of the women and girls? Because the women and girls don't always have the ability to stand up and say, I don't want to do this. And where they do, that's where the clash can come, or they're viewed as being difficult. So for men and boys, even innocently, kind of recognizing that actually I do have a role to play, and I'm not going to be an enabler to this inequality issue, because that's essentially what it is. It's about inequality. And where the woman doesn't conform, that's where she then often within the community sees the clash. She's the difficult one, or she's not. So, it's then challenging those ideas too.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think we can all relate to that in kind of South Asian households where I don't think it's just the case for Punjabi Sikhs. I mean,
no, I mean, I'm just kind of saying that's from my experience. I know it's not just mine. I see it through friends as well, and other people.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we can all. Well, we could probably both relate to that as well.
Yeah.
I guess from the male side of things. So, yeah. And I mean, okay, cool. I guess moving away from. I mean, I know that those kind of inequalities do hold, and that's, I guess, one way that we could go about making a difference. I mean, in terms of I guess being like a normal bystander, I guess, just when you're out and about as well, and not just in your family home. If we are, or if anyone listening or watching, is a bystander that witnesses of any form of abuse, whether verbal or physical. I mean, would you say there's any ways that, or any advice that you could give for us or anyone listening or watching that is a bystander to, I guess, challenge these abusers in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've always got to be thinking about safety and personal safety in that situation, because it depends on what you're witnessing. You might be witnessing something that's particularly violent, or there are weapons, and it just would not be appropriate for you personally to go into that situation and put yourself at risk. But what you can do is you can get help by involving others. So, if it isn't safe, you could see if it's appropriate to contact police, or to get somebody else that could appropriately help to intervene in that situation. Also, documenting what's happening. So, you might need to be a witness to what you're seeing. And that can always then help the victim as well after, say, for example, if they don't want to pursue, but actually it's really important that we do that as a witness, you've seen that situation. So yeah, it's about kind of assessing the situation and how safe it is for you to intervene. If it's not safe, involve with others. But if it is, then you could also interrupt the incident. Whether it's interrupting the conversation or doing something that's a bit of a distraction, if it's safe, to do that. But yeah, what we don't want people doing is challenging situations and putting themselves at more risk as a bystander. It's really about assessing and getting help, I think, is the best thing, and kind of recalling the events too.
Definitely. Well, look, obviously, I'm conscious of time, and I know that you do have to kind of get off to other interviews and whatnot. So, I guess last question, I guess we do have is, for those that are interested in learning more about the Enough campaign and what your charity does, where can they learn more about the campaign and your charity as well?
Yeah, so as part of the campaign, there is a new website, a campaign website, which is on www.gov.uk/enough. And on that website, there is guidance on safe interventions leading on from the last question, and how people can report abuse. And then for Karma Nirvana, they can go to karmanirvana.org.uk. And there's so many different ways that people can get involved, from becoming a community champion and being a disruptor of this issue within the community, through to fundraising. There's all sorts of things that people do for us nationally. But yeah, you can go to our website to find out a bit more.
Perfect. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us today. I really, really do appreciate your time. And I mean, I've definitely taken something away from this conversation, and I hope
definitely
that, like, you know, all of our listeners and viewers have as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Natasha. Hope you have an amazing rest of the day, and good luck obviously with the rest of the campaign as well. So yeah, guys, I mean, like Natasha said, if you do want any more information on the campaign, that's www.gov.uk/enough. We will obviously put details of Karma Nirvana and that campaign.
We'll leave a link to the website at the bottom of the description, and on our Instagram as well. So definitely take a look at it. You can definitely learn more about the campaign through that.
Just wanted to add a little kind of 5-minute segment on the back of it to, I guess, conclude really.
Yeah, so like give our kind of stance on it and like what we think. So obviously everyone's heard about these situations where like Asian women they're getting pressure from their family. We all know there is, like, you see it on Twitter all the time, you see it on like social media all the time, these like they make a joke out of it, but it is quite serious. So like oh yeah, my mom loves my brother so much more than me, like he gets to like lay around and not do anything while I've got to cook and clean and everything. Like, you look at it like, oh yeah, she's just making a joke, but there is a serious connotation behind it. Like it's, without knowing, as a man, like I don't have any females in my immediate family. I've got cousins and stuff obviously, but as someone who's got a sister, do you feel like is there any pressure on your sister more than you guys?
I think obviously in my household personally, it is a little bit different. I don't think we're as traditional as, you know, we're not, I guess, as culturally traditional or orientated as maybe others, but obviously you do see it, you know, not to kind of draw out my own family and that, but you do see it in, like, you know, I guess parts of the Asian community, when you're going around people's houses and stuff like that. It is a case where, yeah, you know, the women are serving the food and the men are chilling and you know, just, yeah, like, you know, lazing about and stuff. And obviously I think a lot of what Natasha was saying, that obviously that's not, and she said it in the podcast, like, that's not abuse, you know, those sort of things, that is forms of inequality, but that's where in some households the abuse can stem from. And that kind of, you know, if you as a guy you know, have, I guess, girls in your family, then, and you're seeing these sort of inequalities, then I guess it's your responsibility, if you don't agree with that, to just let your sister or your female cousins know. You know, I guess, like I said, in some houses, in some households, it's seen as, I guess, a bit more of a serious issue. In others, they just kind of get on with it, and it's all, you know,
it's more like, you're right, it's not direct abuse, like you're not abusing someone by doing it, but I feel like what it is it's actions of enabling. You're giving, you're following that trend of, like, from years ago, where like this is how it should be, this is the gender roles, etc. I feel like that's what you're enabling, and you can make a big difference by changing that. Like, just say, oh, okay, no, I'll do this, like, instead of like just allowing it to happen.
Yeah,
like, you can make a big difference just by doing that. And if you do that from a very young age for women, they will set a tone for them going forward in their life. For example, if you're an older brother and you just allow your younger sister to take all of that burden of, like, looking after the household, cleaning, cooking, whatever, as she gets older, like, psychologically there will be a like thing engraved into her, where, yeah, I need to do all this, the man can do whatever he wants, he can just chill.
Yeah.
So as she meets
Exactly.
other men, where she, like, gets older, gets married, etc., I feel like that's when the issues can occur, because not all men will be nice about it. Like, they might have a much more aggressive like thing to it, and your sister not being able to stand up for yourself, or like your family member not being able to stand up for themselves, would then be a big issue, because they will take advantage of it.
And obviously, this isn't us like, you know, telling people how to live or how to do their thing. Like at the end of the day, like as a woman, like I guess, you know, whatever you feel comfortable with, I guess it's more just, you know, if you do feel like you're experiencing these sort of things and it's an issue, or as a guy, as I've said, as an older brother, or even if you've got young daughters, you know, some people at our age. So, you know, these are just things I guess to look out for, be conscious of. And 100%, like child psychology is, I mean, obviously I haven't studied it, but I'm aware that, you know, things and how you're treated at a young age, as a young girl, or even a young boy, you know, when you grow up, it has a huge influence, and it's just maybe about being a bit more conscious over the type of behaviours that you're expressing to your younger siblings or daughters and sons. So yeah, a really insightful I guess interview and piece from Natasha. You know, we will aim to get more guests on as well, you know, as I guess the podcast progresses and stuff like that. We do have things bubbling, we are working on things, and if there's any other, I guess, topics that you want us to discuss, any guests that you'd like us to approach and get on, just let us know.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. We'll leave, I think I mentioned earlier, we'll leave the links and everything in the description for you guys to check it out yourselves. But yeah, it's been good chat. So it's been Abs.
Rayon, 2.5 beards. We're out in a
Peace.
bit.